Yeah, so we are a shell in the pit, and we are primarily a game audio company. We've been around for 9 years, and we've grown over the years, and now we're 13 employees. And we primarily work on indie games. It's a pretty wide range of games. A lot of them are uh, quirky or wholesome or unique in some sort of way. Yeah, that's a shell in the pit. And I'm N. And
I'm
I'm,
Jamie.
yeah.
I'm Rachel, and yeah, thanks all for joining us.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, did you want to do the land acknowledgement?
Yeah, okay. So before we start the official Q&A, I just want to acknowledge that um, A Shell in the Pit is based in the unceded territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. All right, I think we can get started.
Okay. Here's our first question. What are your daily, weekly schedules look like on average?
Should I? I think I should go first because my day-to-day is probably the most simple. Because I basically wake up and plop myself in front of the desk and go through the tasks that I need to finish for the day. I usually try to plan it for myself the day before, and I just go through them. My main tasks usually is just asset creation. And if I have any questions, I can, I talk to Rachel and I talk to Em and Joey, who are audio directors, um, and I post memes. It's a very important part of my daily task. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, mine is a little all over the place. I'm usually working on like at least 6 games um, at a time. So the first thing I do each morning is just check in all the various Slacks or Discords to see if there's any communication to look into, and then I will open our project management software. We use ClickUp, and I check notifications there, which is often like new assets to review and give feedback on. And then once I've done those, I guess, project management duties, I will either do sound design editing in Reaper, um, or I could do implementation or mixing or like just play testing, getting captures. Um, and I also sometimes I edit trailers, and I also work on the website. That's like for the most part, that's I'm doing one of those things.
Yeah, my day starts off like Ems. I like to check in on messages on Slack and Discord first, and also like clear up emails. Although sometimes the emails are a bit overwhelming, and I bump it to the end of the day, which I don't know if is the best strategy. Should probably get emails cleared first thing in the morning too. And then my actual day to day differs a lot. So I started off as like a producer on individual games. I'm shifted more towards like a studio producer now. So I'm in all of like the new client meetings when we talk to folks who are interested in working with us. I'm trying to help Gord out more with like administrative stuff with like running the business. And then I also help out on specific games still. So basically, whatever is needed. Usually communication with clients to figure out priorities and timelines and deadlines, and then talking internally with folks to make sure that we have the bandwidth, the capacity to meet all of the deadlines. And if not, sort of like we have a flexible work model, so like shuffling folks around so we can scale up and down on individual projects as needed. And then I still help out with a little bit of implementation on one of our projects. And then when needed, when there's like an emergency and a deadline coming up quickly, I will still help out with sound design sometimes. I was able to do that last week, which was really fun working with other folks. So yeah, kind of all over the place. I think that's
Awesome.
yeah.
I'll go ahead and move on to the next question. Do you have any tips on how I can improve job prospects and networking while working full time to sustain myself in an expensive city like Vancouver?
Who wants to start this?
This is a big question.
I kind of
Yeah.
want to hear Jamie's take on this because I think you were most recently in this position, like networking and working and trying to make it in sound design. So
Yeah, I can just share what I think about this question. Because I think it's a tricky question because it's a tricky situation. Like Vancouver has very high cost of living, even compared to like, global cities. And it is a struggle for sure. And like if you are in the job hunting place, then like the struggle kind of like multiplies itself, I guess. But my advice would be definitely don't limit yourself to looking into the studios that are just in Vancouver. Look into more like remote positions globally, and networking as well. You don't like obviously there's like a lot of in-person meetups going on actually in Vancouver. Vancouver Game Development Discord is hosting a lot of online meetups, and they are doing their kind of like semi-annual like in-person meetups that's coming up in the summer too. And Full Indie, which is also a big Discord channel in the Vancouver game scene, and they started their in-person meetups again, and they are doing it, I think, every 2 weeks or something like that. And I'll be there, so we can meet and chat if you want. But also go to like a lot of online meetups. Airwiggles also host online meetups, and it's such a great way to network with people and like hear what how it's like to work in different studios in different parts of the world. So yeah, don't limit yourself just like looking into local stuff, but branch out, and hopefully there is something that fits your schedule and their schedule, and like that you guys can work it out together.
And I think a lot of like the stuff that you need to do is about energy management as well. Working a full-time job and trying to get into another job is really hard. And I think it takes a lot of effort, not just to find that entryway, but also to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and like not burning out. So, making sure you get enough sleep, you're eating well, you're doing exercise, all the things. But like really focusing on that, because if you don't have the energy, it's going to be a lot harder to do any of these like networking things. So part of that could also be making sure that you are enjoying whatever you're doing to get into sound design. So like making sure that if you're doing networking, it's fun, and yeah, it's more like just make sure it's not taking away energy from you, I would say.
To circle back to something that Jamie touched on, everything that Em said for sure, because like I don't know, I'm very introverted. I remember when I was in that position, I felt like I had to go to all the things or I would miss out on opportunities, and that wasn't sustainable in the long run. So I think also like picking and choosing based on what looks interesting to you, but also just what works well with like how you're feeling and your own schedule. But definitely it's important to be meeting people in the sound design sphere, but also just like game developers, because they're the ones that will hire you if you want to be like a freelancer, if you want to work in indie games too. So spreading yourself out that way. Oops, sorry. There's a cat. But yeah, like taking the time you have available for networking events and then going to sound design events and then also game development events.
And then like trying, like not just networking for the sake of networking, but going there and trying to make friends. So like I made some really great friends when I was starting out and going to full indie, and we weren't even talking about our games. We were just there like playing games together and having fun. And like we've helped each other out so much since then. Um, yeah, that just goes back to the making sure it's fun thing. But another specific tip I have is to work on your reel, your sound design reel, and to use Real Talk as a resource for that. They have such good tips, and it's like a really, really good resource. That's from Power Up Audio.
Okay. Next question is how could someone successfully transition from a sound designer to a technical sound designer in a successful studio such as a Shell in the Pit?
That is a very good question. And so I'll give an answer, but I will also open with a caveat that the way we do things at a Shell in the Pit isn't necessarily the way that a lot of other studios do things. So at a Shell in the Pit, we like to give opportunities to people to work in the areas that they're interested in and also to like develop the way they want to. And so if somebody has primarily been a sound designer but want to know more about implementation or even like working directly in Unity or Unreal, when possible, we try to make space for them to like learn on the job with the other folks on the team that do that work and sort of like learn and train and hopefully eventually transition into a position where they can do that work. But that's sort of, I don't want to say it's like unique to a Shell in the Pit, but I know that there definitely are studios that might not have the same luxury of like training people on the job. And so if you find yourself in that position, the onus is more on you to like make time to learn the things that you want to do. But I think making it clear to the people you work with that you are interested in moving into more technical roles and like let people know what you're doing to like educate yourself and what you're learning. And then giving them updates on like how you feel you're doing is a good thing. And then always, I guess, be prepared that just your word might not be good enough. There might still be some sort of a test involved to see if you're actually able to do the work that's required. But yeah, we like to give people opportunities to like learn and grow different skills internally if possible.
And I will say too, if you're interested in technical work, it's definitely like valuable. So like I think it's a need, not just in our company, but just in general. I think like more technical sound designers are always needed. So definitely pursue that if it's something you're interested in.
Yeah, I just want to add, like I was exactly talking about this at our last team meeting, and everyone was like, "You like check out this resource, and like go to this YouTube channel or like take this course." And also, as a company, we have like a specific education budget that we can use as employees. If you want to have develop new skills or need to buy some equipment to kind of like help with learning the new skills, the company is open to support that. So that's a Shell in the Pit specific. But I just want to touch on that.
That's amazing. Okay, this is the next question is the one I'm most excited to ask is tell us about the website.
That's not a question.
Tell us
Just kidding.
everything
Just
about
kidding.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we made the website in the way that it is because we wanted to really showcase the team first. So if you go to the website, shellinthepit.com, you can see we're all floating there together. And thank you, Jamie. And if you every time you reload the website, the team shuffles. So that kind of is there to demonstrate that there's not really a hierarchy. We're all equals. And if you click on each of us, you'll hear we all gave sounds, and it'll show you the games we've worked on. Not all of them because we couldn't fit all of them over around everyone. So just like everyone's games that they're most proud of, basically. And then the thing that I like about it is if you click those games, it'll scroll down to the bottom and it'll show all of the games that A Shell in the Pit has done. So it becomes almost like a game in itself if you can be going back and forth, and listening to the sound of the games and the sound of each of our voices. And I think having sound there, we do have our reel and our trailer reel, but having sounds for each of the games demonstrates what we're all about, which is that like we work on interactive audio. So it was just kind of, we felt it was the best way to show that. Madeline Berger did the art, and yeah, I don't know if there's anything more specific. If anyone has any like questions about it, let me know.
When was the website like born? Because when I was looking into, before I was hired, I thought it was the coolest thing. I was like, what the hell is going on? Like there is, like I can hear people's voices and we make such silly sounds and stuff. And I think it's very unique. I've never seen a website like this. It like you said, it's very interactive. So like what was the idea behind it, inspiration behind it, and like when was it born? I just want to know everything.
I want to say 2018.
I think 2018 we started thinking about ideas. 2019 we found someone to start helping us with like building it out. We knew it'd be a little bit tricky making it interactive the way we wanted it to be. As to when it launched, that I don't know. Also
somewhere around then.
Yeah. Okay. Sometime in 2019.
And yeah, with the idea behind it, we really wanted to show our personality. And I think we are a pretty unique studio, so it made sense to do it in a unique way. I think the idea just came about pretty naturally. Like I think it was Gord that really wanted to have us floating. So we kind of based it around that. And then, the bubbles came about from the underwater theme with the octopus logo. And then I was working on it with Ham and Madeline, and the like floating and the bubbles underwater, it just kind of naturally progressed into that, I would say.
I see some questions in chat. It was not coded in-house. We did find somebody to help us code it. How did we pick what sounds to record? Everyone was just able to submit whatever sounds they wanted to.
Yeah, it was like everyone submit six sounds.
My favorite is Gorgeous saying, hey, because sometimes if I'm on the website, I'll be like, oh, Gord, yes?
And then the sounds for the games are, we have tried to pick like whoever has worked on that game the most, usually the audio director or just whoever was most involved in the sound design will choose one of the assets from the game that kind of represents the game. So it's iconic, or it's just it gives the feel of the game. I'm usually the one, like often people will submit 3 sounds and then I'll just pick from those which one seems to give off the vibe the most.
That was amazing to hear about. I really love that website. Okay, the next question is, I have heard plenty of vocal elements in your project. Do you use voice actors externally or rely on your own voice? How do you avoid repetitiveness in different projects when using your own voice or sound effects again and again?
Do either of you want to touch on this? Since I can talk about it too, but I was just talking about the website. So if either of you have input, feel free.
I think you're the master of vocal sound design, so please
Okay.
go ahead.
Um, yeah, so I've been using my voice since I first started doing game audio. With the almost one of the very first sounds I made was for Night in the Woods, and it was for the UI. I was like, anytime a little bubble appears in the game, it sounds like whoop. And since then, I've just continued doing it, and I've never actually had a problem, too much of a problem with like this sounds similar, because there are so many ways that you can edit your voice to make it different. There's stretching, which I do very often, and there's like for if I'm using it for UI now, I'll often just record a longer sound and take a really, really small sample of it. And no matter, like, depending on what fraction of a millisecond you choose, it's going to sound really different. So there's like a lot of flexibility there. And then other than UI, you can use it for, I often use it for wind. So you just kind of like exhale in front of the microphone for a really long time, which is often kind of difficult, but you can edit out the breath. And then you can also use it for, like, if you want to do a creepy tonal bed for ambiances, if you do like a humming sound. I also I used it for the cars in Night in the Woods too. Uh, and then in terms of actual like character voices, I think it's another element where there's a really wide range. There is a certain limit. So I don't actually worry too much about one game versus the next, but I do want to make sure that characters within one game sound pretty different. So I could probably voice 6 characters, but that's it. No more than that. And then it'll start to
Six
sound the same.
characters? That's a
Yeah, but
lot.
we're talking like grunts and stuff. If it was, I've never done full like words, like that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, it's just like about making different pitches with your voice. And if they're short enough, it's usually something that you can get away with. It's definitely something that's coming up in Beastie Ball, which is our newly announced game where there's all these little creatures. There's going to be like 100 creatures in that game, so it's going to be a lot of voices. And yeah, it's nice to have such a large team because it's really easy to ask people on the team to do voices. We're all constantly asking each other to do stuff for each other's games, and we do also hire voice actors when necessary, usually for more like worded voice. I'm sure there's a better word for this, but yeah,
Yeah, for scripted dialogue,
scripted dialogue.
if the client wants to have it fully voiced, then we will do the casting and get actors into
Mhm.
the recording booth.
Yeah, but it's definitely something that I would recommend anyone play with more, because there's so much flexibility, and doing it yourself just is fun. And yeah, you can really personalize it.
Okay, that was an amazing breakdown of that question. My next question is, hello, to my ears, your studio has a very stylized sound design. How do you establish that across different projects, and more importantly, inside your team? Do you use or share similar techniques or approach to sound design? If you could, can you give some examples?
Good question. So one thing we've recently talked about, it's funny you should mention that because we actually want to do more of this than we already are. And one thing that recently came up is that it would be helpful to, so I mentioned earlier, I think, when we were live, that we have a flexible setup at the company. And so like as projects get busy or as they get less busy, because the cadence of game development rises and falls, we're able to scale up the number of like sound designers working on a project or scale down as needed to help meet deadlines and to help prevent crunch. And so one thing we've talked about recently is that when we first start new projects, usually there's people making source, right? And it would be helpful to like share the sources or like the source sessions. We're almost, I think we're all using Reaper now. I don't know if there are any Pro Tools holdouts anymore. Maybe one? I
I
don't
think
know.
Joey, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
Otherwise, we're all on Reaper. So like we're able to like share sessions with each other and like sharing dedicated like libraries that we've put together with source material for a specific game. Something else we've done on really stylized games like 30XX is that we would do a workshop at the start of the game, and the designers would sort of like work together to figure out the processing chain and like the general approach to getting that stylized sort of like 8-bit sound, but more high fidelity than what you traditionally see. And so, yeah, shared source, shared libraries, we're going to do more of, and then workshops as needed if there's like some stylized like processing that needs to be done.
and then also having an audio director. Like on the bigger games, some games we have, I don't know, like 6 people designing on or something. And so there's always one person listening to all the sounds and giving feedback and making sure that it does feel cohesive. This is something that has come up on Pacific Drive, a game that we're currently working on, where there's this the game takes place in this zone which has supernatural elements to it. And as an audio director, I really have to pay attention to like make sure the supernatural elements sound cohesive, which is actually pretty hard. And I'm not like telling people how to make the sound. So it's purely just like, oh, it needs a bit more static or whatever it is to like blend together. Because, yeah, part of this question is like, do we share similar techniques? And I would say no, we don't. There's like a few of us that like I like to record sounds. I know like Preston likes to record sounds. Like a few of us do, and um, Ben, there's a few of us that like really like synths a lot more, which I don't really know much about. um, but I guess part of it is like we split like the people who like to do like synth sound design often gravitate towards the um, sci-fi games and that kind of stuff. So that's another thing that we do is like we all are able to choose which games we're interested in working on. So I think that kind of makes it cohesive in a way. I don't know if that made sense, but
I think like not specifically in terms of style, but we also have very extensive documentation about like how to approach sound design or even just like rendering specs. And like for me, it helped a lot personally, like to just like get into the company's workflow and like getting the hang of how it's done and different like styles or different resources that we can use. So we have that pretty sorted out. But I actually have a question for M because like I'm still pretty new to the company, so like the things that M and Rachel are saying are like not news to me, but I'm also learning as much as you are in the chat. But I was just wondering how you jump from a project to another and another and another like within a day, and kind of like keep that cohesive, concept in your head, or like for each game, because there are such different games, in terms of aesthetics, and the context of it and the genre of it. So like, how do you manage and like maintain that like focus level?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely hard. I try to not do that. Like if I can focus on a game for a day, I feel very happy. Makes it a lot easier. But if I do have to jump around, I guess I don't know. Each game is just so different that like while you're in it, that's all you can really like hear or think about. I think it also takes practice. I feel like when I first started, because I was still, even when I first started, I was working on probably like 4 different games. And I think there was a lot more similarities then versus now, like having had the practice and just like developing the ear for different sounds, that helps. But yeah, I don't really have a great answer because it is just hard. Maybe Rachel can give better insight.
Well, I do know that there are folks in the team who like doing, and when they're doing design work, that it helps when it's just one project for the full day. And then there are also some other folks in the team who like the option of bouncing around a little bit when needed. So they might feel stuck or uninspired on a particular project, or just feeling like the sounds aren't coming together, and that's a good opportunity to pivot to a different project that might be very different. That'll be like a really nice change of pace and sort of get the creative juices flowing again. Um, and yeah, so I think it's something as like as you stick with the company and work with us longer and work on more projects, Jamie, you'll find what works best for you. Um,
Yeah.
but I wanted to circle back to what I mentioned about like having the audio director. Um, yeah, the audio director position is kind of interesting at a show in the pit too, because um, after a sound designer has been with us for like a couple years, and if like they show the interest, we do like to give everyone an opportunity to direct their own projects if they want to. And so the director is a position more like, yeah, they mentor and they offer a lot of good tips, and they're there for the more junior sound designers. We like to hire a lot of junior people at the company too. But at a certain point, the audio director position is also just like the title we give to the person who maintains cohesion, because you might be the audio director and you could be working on people who are like even more senior than you, helping out with design. And so that title is more about, I think, a reflection of our company structure and how we like to do things, is that you can be a
Hmm.
director and you can work with folks that might have more seniority and experience, but it's about like who has the creative vision for the audio for a game and is the best person to do that like quality check.
Something you said there also made me think about how, like, just talking about like being able to jump around. Like, it is hard, but it's definitely, I think, something to practice, which is knowing what you feel like doing. Because it's really hard to be creative every day. And sometimes I will open something and I'll just be like, and then sometimes, so if I ever feel like that, I don't force myself. I will pivot and do what I do feel like doing. And that helps me stay more productive, I guess, and work faster.
Yeah, we're still improving on this. I think we have the space and like the room for all of our designers to make those decisions on a day-to-day basis, because we've also been working really hard to be a no crunch studio. So like I said, the scaling up and scaling down. I don't know if you've ever like looked at the Ashelnabit credits on like some games, and you might be surprised that it's a small game, but there are like 4 or 5 people working on it. And that's because sometimes the cadence of development requires that like a lot of stuff is coming in, and we don't want to ask 1 or 2 people to be working like a lot of extra hours just to meet a deadline. And so chances are there's already been another designer who's familiar with the project that can hop in and like help out. And I think because we have that sort of support from the team, hopefully all our designers feel that they have space to say like, not this project, not today. I'll do something else and come back to this tomorrow, because there should never be a deadline that falls solely on like one person to meet, is what we're working towards. Hopefully. I think we've made good strides, but we're always looking for room to improve in that area.
Awesome. I feel like that question, there's a lot to take away from. I definitely feel like when this goes live on YouTube, there's going to be a lot of people timestamping this part of the talk.
So
Okay.
catching up with chat, we missed a chat question. Do you have any favorite source to record?
My voice.
And I do see this question. I think it might be a joke. It might not be. We do work with contractors, like international contractors, but right now we only hire Canadians. Sorry. Or you have to be like a permanent resident in Canada to be hired at Sean Lepid. So.
Okay, so the next question is two parts. What advice do you have those wanting to work on indie titles, and how does your studio find work on such diverse projects?
Wanting to work on indie titles. I guess that's kind of our jam, right? That was sort of how we got started. That's most of our projects still. Go to indie game dev meetups, like meet indie game developers if you want to be working on indie titles. I'm pretty sure that's how Gord started with Rogue Legacy way back when. That's how we got started with a lot of our other like smaller indie projects. I'm probably not the best person to answer this question, because at a certain point we started getting requests from people who wanted to work with us, who'd sort of like heard of our work and wanted to do that. So I've been a little out of the loop of like actively seeking out indie devs. But I know Jamie, you keep on top of Twitter. Oh, I'm sorry. I just I deleted Twitter earlier, and I was like, I totally forgot all the Twitter nomenclature. The people on Twitter accounts.
I think just definitely like go to different communities, Discord communities especially. I think indie devs are most active on either Twitter or Discord. But when I see job opportunities for indie games, it's mostly like posted on Discord channel. So I recommend you like joining a couple and really be involved and get your name out there. I think especially I assume you are a freelancer, the person who asked this question. So especially when you're looking for freelancing work in general, I think it's important to just get involved and get your name out there and like let people know that you are available and you can provide this type of service and have like a reel ready. And also just like be friendly with people. Like don't be a jerk, you know.
That's good advice.
Yeah, because it's all people at the end of the day, and you don't want to be like, listen to me, I'm the best sound designer ever. You want to hire me, and this is my rate. Like you don't want to be like that. So yeah.
Yeah, you want people to want to work with you because they want to like you're nice to work with. You don't like actually have to befriend them to get a job, but just like seem nice and like excited too. I think one of the things I often hear in the sound design world is like people kind of like complaining like people don't care as much about sound as they should, and like often that is true, but my strategy has always been to like show game devs why they should care about sound. Like, actually, it's a really powerful tool, and here's what we can do. Here's all these ideas. And if you approach them and show that enthusiasm about just like making their game better, I think it's often well received. You don't want to like pitch too hard, but just to be, like excited. And then talking about Twitter, with all its faults, it is definitely a hub for indie games. Like everyone is on there. That's how people are showing their games. I would say to try to be as active as you can. Like Jamie, I remember being really impressed with how enthusiastic and active you were on Twitter. And I was like, oh, yeah, enthusiasm. And to do that, I know that like sometimes being on Twitter is hard. So I would just recommend like really making sure you only follow people who are posting like make your Twitter a positive space. Like make sure you mute all these words that you don't want to see and just like that's how I've went about it. My like timeline is very pleasant.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, curate your own timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like play a lot of games, like go to game jams and uh oh, here's my dog. Yeah, just like play games and you can give feedback on games and have fun with it, I guess.
Awesome. Okay, so next question is: when working on smaller games, how do you balance lore resources versus budget, lore resources slash budget versus putting in the time needed to knock it out of the park, as you always do?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. So I always feel awkward talking about money things, but I know it's a reality of being in the industry and the business. We like to do money things in a lot of different ways because we know that, well, one, we want to continue working on indie projects even though we have grown so much. Um, and and two, we know that people are in different situations. So like the available funding that they currently have may be different. The amount of funding they're expecting to come in could be different. That's especially important now when right now the climate is a little bit up in the air. We've seen some layoffs and, it seems like maybe there's not as much funding going around these days as there has been in the past few years. And so we have metrics. We know what it costs to keep the company running the way we run it. And then we have like sort of like a minimum hourly that we need people to pay us so that we can run the company the way it's run. And then from there, it'll be a client choice. Can they afford our hourly rate? If they can't, are they open to revenue share? And if they are open to rev share, it'll be Gord has this beautiful spreadsheet. And so we can use it to sort of estimate how well we think the game is going to do, what it might sell for, how many copies it might sell, and then sort of like what rev share percentage would we need to sort of like make up the difference if they can't pay our full hourly rate, right? And then because we're not getting paid the full rate up front, there's usually like the expectation that if we are getting rev share, that would be a little bit more than we would have made just getting paid up front because we are taking on a little bit of the risk. So that's one of the things we take into consideration. Something else we'll do is if we really want to work on a project, but we know that their budget is limited, we always do like full audio coverage for our games. That's our approach. But we also understand that somebody might really want to work with us and that might not be an option. And so we'll do our full audit and then we'll work with the developers to sort of figure out what are the priority sounds, like what should we target first? And like if we run out of money, does it still sound like good? Pretty much, because we always want our games to sound good. So there's a little bit of that too, working really closely with the developers to find out like what they think are the most important sounds, giving them our thoughts on what we think is most important and like making it work if the money is not there, because we never want to stop working on indie projects.
Yeah. And also, it really helps that we have a very diverse team. We like put effort into that, and I think it really helps like with people's interests too. Like I feel like we have a really diverse range of what people are interested in working on, and everyone's seeking out those projects. So that just naturally like gives us an array of diverse games, which is really cool. So definitely pays to do that if you are also an audio company.
To add to that, every new project request that comes in, we tell the full team about it, and we only work on games where people on the team want to work on a game. So if no one on the team is like interested or has the bandwidth to do it, then we'll refer someone else for the sound. So nobody is forced to work on anything that they don't want to work on, which I think also helps with some of the previous questions that we've answered, like how do you stay motivated and like
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Awesome. The next couple questions are going to be coming from the chat. So I have put down some notes down of what people have said so far in the chat. One of the questions was, I've been very into tonal sound design lately, Nintendo, etc. Do you guys have any favorite instrument plugins or techniques in the world of sound design?
My voice.
Yeah, Jamie, do you have any?
Yeah,
that
I try to avoid super tonal design for the game that I'm working on right now. I don't want it to be like recognizable, but when I need to have like synth that kind of sounds for like more sci-fi vibe, I actually use whoa, I forgot what it's called. It's by Arturia. It's like a kind of complete package kind of thing. There's a lot of presets. Oh my god, I will post a link of it or like the name of it after the stream. I love using that because it's really easy to just like search the metadata and then like kind of like have like a ballpark synth preset, and then like I just record like a note of it and then tweak it after. Another thing that I like using these days is Crystallizer and Echo Boy Junior. Not the full Echo Boy, but Echo Boy Junior by Sound Toys. They are awesome. And like speaking of tonal stuff, I actually really like tweaking like the microtonal stuff and like make them sound a little bit dissonant if they're like negative sounding stuff, but like not to the point that it's like recognizable intervals, but then like it's still kind of like in the same realm of harmonics, so that it doesn't really bother the ears, but then like somehow, you know, kind of subconsciously we take the information as like, oh, it's negative. Another thing is, it's like such niche thing, but I love setting so on Crystallizer you can add the harmonics like in different intervals, or like different cents, I guess. It's 100 cents is a semitone, I think. So I love doing it in perfect fifth, which is 700 cents. And I also love doing it full octave up or down. Usually up works better for me. So that's like 1200. And it's not like I'm getting into it like really like tonally or harmonically, but I just like doing little things. Coming from my musical background too, I think it's a little more recognizable for me, so it's more fun to find that balance of like, oh, there's a little bit of like tonal thing going on, but it's not musical enough for people to like pick up, oh, that's like a major third interval, or like a minor third, or you know, like, oh, that's a chord or whatever. I don't go that deep into it. Yeah, but that's what I do.
I also use Crystallizer for everything. Everything. Like, I don't use many plugins, to be honest, but I do use Crystallizer for everything.
I will say, as like a general approach, our company approach to sound design is like to not make sound effects musical, or to try to avoid really tonal elements, because we don't want it to clash with music. And the exception would be in projects where we deliberately try to pitch sounds to music, or in cases where the sound effects are supposed to like enhance or work with the background music.
Like Wandersong.
Yeah, I was thinking of Wandersong. So that's our general approach. However, that said, I am playing a lot of Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm like, there are games where it makes sense to go for that musical sound design. And I've recently been thinking like, I wonder if I should keep that in mind. And there's going to be a project coming up where we can like make a real effort to try to take more of that approach because I mean, I love how Tears of the Kingdom sounds. So I love a lot of the musical sound effects there. So looking for opportunities, but only where it would make sense. Right.
Greg has this tool in Game Maker that we used in Chicory and we'll be using in Beastie Ball as well, that if we just give him a sound that is like the note C, he will pitch it in the game engine to match the music, which is really cool because it's really hard to design in like a full scale if you want to do musical notes. We didn't have that for Wonder Song.
Oh wow, all individual like 12 tones for
Yeah.
each asset.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was really hard.
Wow, that's interesting.
Awesome. Next question is, can y'all expand a bit on what it was like going from a small company to growing to the current size you're at now? What were some of the main obstacles you faced in the expansion?
Project management. Like Rachel stepped into the role as producer and it was like really hard before I think she did that. Like just managing, like making sure everyone has something to work on, making sure each game has like a lead communication and audio direction. Because before we would do one person works on a game. So I was just like working on a game. I was doing everything for the game and then like branching out and just having to like manage what everyone's doing is really hard, but really valuable.
I do want to say that it was not necessarily our intention to grow and be a bigger studio. It just kind of happened. So there definitely were a lot of growing pains, and I think there still are. I mean, we were 5 for a while, and then 8, and then like 11 or 12, and now 13. And every time we make sort of a jump, I do feel like things feel a little stretchy. They're like things feel tense, and then we sort of have to like learn and adapt how to like sort of like recalibrate to the new size. I think this is what it feels like to me. I guess maybe being in the role that I'm in now, um, I think the main obstacles is like it's an ongoing thing because we're constantly having to sort of reassess how things are going, what's working, what's not working, where do we need to improve to like be the kind of workplace we want to be. And sometimes there's a lot of projects with a lot of deadlines close together, and it's really easy for like that sort of like high level thinking to fall to the wayside, but it's also really important not to put it off for very long because it has a direct effect on like everyone's well-being, like how they're feeling doing on things. So I think it's the obstacle is knowing how people are feeling because as you grow, you also take on more projects, right? But you also take on more projects. It's a cycle, right? You have more people, you work on more projects. Because you work on more projects, you need more people. And I think it's like and I don't think obstacle is really the right word. The way we're talking about it right now, not that there was a problem with the way how it was phrased in the question. But I think it's just really important to make sure that like you never feel like you've settled on a way of working and like that's the way it has to be. That you should be constantly like revisiting, reassessing how people are feeling, how they're doing, how the company is doing, and then making adjustments to make sure that everyone is like feeling good about work, essentially.
That's great.
We haven't.
Oh,
Sorry. I just realized while Rachel was talking that we haven't talked about the 4-day work week yet. I think is
That's a winner.
yeah. And it goes like I don't know if it's something we would have been able to do if we were smaller. Um,
Probably not.
so growing like this has definitely enabled a lot of really cool things, and one of them is we have a 4-day work week now, and it's amazing.
I mean, I think there are small, I think Power Up's on a 4-day work week too, and they're a small team, but they also
That's
don't
true.
work on as many projects as us. So I
Yeah.
think if you want to be a big studio working on like maybe like 18 projects that are like active at once, um, you need a lot of people to make that work, and also have a 4-day work week. So I think it was last year. Yeah, it was last year, 7 months ago, we tested out a 4-day work week. Um, so reduced hours, same pay for everyone at the company. And so most people work 28 to 30 hours a week. Flexible. So there are some people who work a few hours every day. There are people who like to work evenings and weekends. And then there are people who work 9 to 5. So basically, whatever works best for you. And because we're big and because we scale people up and down on projects, um, my expectation, I have to send out some surveys to the developers working with to make sure this is true, is that developers haven't really felt the shift because there usually is someone around to answer questions still. Thanks for bringing that up, because I think that is a pretty big part of
Yeah.
our company culture now.
So sorry for interrupting.
No, I interrupted you.
Okay, this is actually one that I'm kind of excited to ask you guys. What's your favorite project you've worked on at Shell in the Pit so far, and why?
I'll go first because I've only worked on like basically one project. I've been working on Pacific Drive and I really like it. It's definitely a bigger game, I think. That
It's
we're
huge.
working on right now. It's huge. Like the assets just keep coming, never ends. But yeah, I really like it because I get to do a lot of different types of designs. Just in terms of like, one day I'm cutting ambiances, one day I'm doing physics sounds, one day I'm doing like UI sounds. So like diversity within that huge game is really awesome for me to experience. And yeah, also the fact that it's like kind of sci-fi, kind of fantasy, kind of realistic, all the things that are like really helpful for me to develop my skills. And the game looks amazing. I'm really intrigued by the story of the game in general in the first place. So I'm really happy about it. Yeah, Pacific Drive.
Rachel?
Oh, so I haven't really been doing a lot of sound design in the past like year and a half, 2 years. I've lost track now. But I think my favorite project, it's hard to pick a favorite because like I like things about different projects I've worked on, but in terms of sort of like what I feel like is an important project to my personal growth and development would be Eichenfell, because that was one of the first projects I worked on at A Shell in the Pit. It was the first project I worked on with M, and I definitely learned a lot about sound design working with them on Eichenfell. So I think Eichenfell just has like a special place.
That was a really fun game. It's so hard to choose. I
Yeah.
don't know. I I feel like I have a certain attachment and fondness to my early games as well. Like Night in the Woods and Wander Song were like some of the first games I worked on, and there was just such a unique like form of excitement as I discovered what sound design was as I was working on these games. And I think also they were like they allowed for a lot of creativity in terms of what sound could do, and that was really fun. Um, yeah, they both have a special place in my heart for forever. And then I've also really enjoyed some of the I worked on the Museum of Other Realities, which was a VR museum where there was just like these VR artworks, and that was so much fun because it was so creative. Like there was just like no limitations to what we could do with sound, and uh I think one of the things that ties these three, I know it's not one, but together, where the developers were really like open to sound and really excited about sound. Like Greg's always been the most enthusiastic developer I've ever worked with, and that just makes such a huge difference in like what it's like to work on the project, which is really cool.
Awesome. I was really excited to ask that question. Okay, the next one, this one's specifically for Jamie. Because of your background as a drummer, do you use rhythmic elements much, or at least something that you think about?
I did not think about this at all when I first started, but Joey, one of the audio directors, he mentioned about like use the rhythm a little bit more. And this was when I was working on just like the physics, items like falling, impact sounds. And like that really like inspired me, that shook me to the core. I was like, what the hell? Why didn't I use it in the first place? And like that's what I think about every day now when I design. Just like the cadence of it, it's very important, like rhythmically, how things are kind of communicating with the players. And also another thing is like M always tells me to like think about the overall balance between frequencies, and I think that was really really helpful. So I do think about rhythmic elements a lot when I design, but also just like the general like frequency spectrum as well.
Here is another question. Do you guys usually end up knowing the whole story of a game you work on?
We definitely try. Sometimes we fall behind and it's like hard to keep up at times, but I think it's really important because sound is so influential, specifically to story, and like because it's basically the craft is about making people like feel stuff, and you have to know what the story is about to know what you want to make them feel. Um, yeah, that's kind of a simple answer, but I don't. I think it covers it.
Awesome. Okay, for the last question, I just saw that you also do sound for Mark Warber and Smarter Every Days. That's so cool, amazing people. How do you come about these gigs?
Oh no. I mean, I've worked on Smarter Everyday slow-mo videos. Did one last week recently. Plug to our Smarter Everyday friends. Bullet versus Bullet came out 5 days ago. We did some excellent slow-mo on that one. However, we started working with Mark Rober and Smarter Everyday before my time, like before I started at Ash on the Pit. So I don't actually know how we started.
I think Mark Rober came about because of our work in Smarter Every Day, and Smarter Every Day was one of Gord's first things that he worked on. I don't remember how he met, how he came about doing that, but I think it was he started out doing music, and then once slow mo videos came about, it was like, oh, this needs sound too. But yeah, I think he's told this before, but I forget now.
Gord knows people.
Yeah.
Many people.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that will conclude our Q&A. Iden Hall's talk starts in 15 minutes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for all the
Yeah,
excellent
thank you.
questions and for listening to us talk.
Yeah.
Whoop,
Thanks,
whoop.
everyone.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.